started today, there's a couple things that we talked about in class, but we want to make sure that we really hit on because they're super important. First of all, don't forget, we do have that quiz coming up Thursday, and we did put on Schoology the map activity that will give you a lot of good practice with finding out where each of those geographic features are and making sure you're really solid on that. So please, please, please use that reference, and if you can't find it, send us a message. Also, we wanted to talk to you guys about one thing that we mentioned in class, but you might have noticed on your own, which was the social hierarchy on page 16, or the social classes of ancient Mesopotamia. We had originally said that the priests were at the very top of the pyramid.
Well, to be honest, it's not we. It was Miss Lewis. Miss Lewis messed up, and yes, I'm just not perfect. I know you thought, but no, I'm not.
Well, that's part of being a historian. We go back, we revise our knowledge when we get new information, and that's what we're doing today. The priests were very important, but in fact, it was the kings who was at the very top. And remember in our census reading, we talked about many of the Mesopotamians believed that the kings were demigods. They were part gods. So they're up at the very top of the pyramid with the, or right underneath the gods, rather. Then the priests, nobility, scribes, and rich merchants are right underneath. And remember, those priests are important because they're the ones communicating with the gods, but they're not quite at the very top. So please make sure, if you haven't already done so, that you update that in your notes on page 16. The rest of the pyramid is the same with our lower class merchants, farmers, and artisans, and our slaves at the very bottom. And remember, this is slavery that's a lot different than slavery in the United States was. This was captured from war, or maybe you owed money, and it wasn't always necessarily a lifelong thing. So with that, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of those famous kings today and how they have an influence on our own life. So,
and wait, we want to welcome Mr. Green. He's back with us today.
Hello, I just want to come by for the intro and say hi because I miss you guys. And that's
yeah. So if you see Mr. Green in the hallway, make sure you tell him that we miss him and that we're thinking of him and give him a high five. So hold on tight, and we're going to learn about some of the most famous kings in Mesopotamian history and their effect.
Awesome.
No. Go.
Go
ahead.
Go ahead.
Did you cut me off?
No, go.
Am I still talking?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I thought you stopped. Okay. Stop lingering in the hallways.
Ooh.
No. Everybody. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm going to scoot over. Oh.
All right, guys, so we've been talking a lot about what it takes to make a civilization and the characteristics for a civilization. And as the city-states developed into independent civilizations, each of them had all of the criteria that were necessary to be a civilization. Each city-state became stronger and more independent on its own. And moving into our new section that we're talking about, Mesopotamian empires, in order to become an empire, you have to take several of those little independent city-states and bring them under your rule and make them be your city-state. And Sargon is going to be the first one to do that. Sargon is from the area of Akkad, or Akkad, it's pronounced both ways. And you can see it right here. It's down there near where we put Babylon on our map, but it's on the other side, not near the Tigris. It's more closer to the Euphrates. And he is from this area of Akkad, or Akkad, and Sargon of Akkadia is what they call him sometimes. So Sargon was going to be our first guy who's going to unite almost all of Mesopotamia, which means his empire, his city-state, had the strongest military, and he was able to use his strong military to take over the other city-states. So, and when you take over several city-states together and you bring them under your rule, you create the world's first empire. So if Sargon could tell us his most famous achievement, he would say, I created the world's first empire, a group of many different lands, all under my rule. So he took all the little city-states and put them all under his rule. He's originally from the kingdom of Akkad, which we showed that over here. And he was able to have his empire last for close to 200 years. We remember Sargon because of his strong leadership abilities and how ambitious he was. And mostly he's remembered for being the first one to unite all of these city-states, the independent city-states, together. And we are going to do an activity with him on Monday. Sargon is one of my favorite characters to talk about because we do some really cool stuff with him. It's a really cool activity, so I look forward to doing that with you guys, and I will see you soon.
Okay, now we're on to the hot question. Do you believe Sargon deserved the title of the Great? Why or why not? Think back to the stuff that Miss Hodges just told you about King Sargon. And then you need to infer and put in your own opinion as to why or why not you think he deserved that title. Do not leave the hot question blank. A lot of people keep leaving it blank. You guys need to fill it in. It is important. It is a higher order thinking question, and we need to make sure we're answering those because we will see them again. We don't ask them for no reason. Make sure you do it. Thanks. Bye.
All right, guys, so today I'm going to be talking about one of the most famous kings of Mesopotamia, who was Hammurabi. Now, you just learned about Sargon, but Hammurabi was a little different. So, in the 1800s, 1800s BC, a group of people known as the Amorites conquered Mesopotamia and began building their own city-states in this area. Now, Babylon, which was one of the greatest cities of them all, is located it was located on the eastern bank. Remember, eastern is over here, eastern bank of the Euphrates River. So in this area right here. And it is now known as Iraq. So what happened was around 1792 BC, the Babylonian king, which means he was from Babylon, Hammurabi, began to conquer Mesopotamian cities. Okay, so when he did this, by adding these lands, he created what's known as the Babylonian Empire. This empire stretched all the way from the Persian Gulf down here and went all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. So he had a lot of land in his empire. During his time, he was thought to be a very just or fair ruler, and he is best known for creating a set of laws for that empire, the Babylonian Empire. Ms. Todrick is actually going to go into more detail about these laws and their significance of today.
Guys, it's so hard to believe that it's already October. It seems like just yesterday we were sitting down and getting to know each other and really hashing out our social contracts for our classes. Those agreements that we all signed of our rights and responsibilities to each other and to our classroom communities. Well, this idea that we had of a social contract isn't anything new. As much as we would like to think we come up with all this cool stuff, we can trace this idea all the way back to Hammurabi and the ancient Mesopotamians. Hammurabi was the first one to really write down this code of laws. And in fact, the reason he did it, as Ms. Lewis said, he put together this huge empire and he wanted everybody to be united under one code of laws. So he decided to take little bits and pieces from all over the empire and put it together. So we see that this code was displayed for all to read in public places. He carved this code, this set of laws, into stone, and these stone pillars were like 8 feet tall, okay? And he would put these in the middle of all sorts of town squares all over his empire. Unfortunately, not many of these are left. The one that we know about that is still left is in the Louvre in Paris, which is a beautiful art museum. And these stand about 8 feet tall. There are several replicas all over the world. I was lucky enough to see one in Chicago this summer. But the only genuine artifact that we know about is in France. Most of them have been displayed or have been rather destroyed because it's been thousands of years. But anyways, we see written in the language of the Mesopotamians the cuneiform that was carved on both sides of these steles. And these laws dealt with almost every part of everyday life. Everything from family issues like divorce or how parents should treat their children and children should treat their parents, to the best ways to run a business, to what happens if you flood your neighbor's field. Now, these were really strict laws, and they were a lot stricter than some of the old Sumerian ones. In fact, as we've been reading our bell work, you've probably noticed that some of these laws are a lot stricter than you might think. For example, we talked about if a father or if a child hits his father, his hands could be cut off. If you've ever heard the saying an eye for an eye, meaning if somebody damages your eye, you get to do that to them, then you are already familiar with Hammurabi's code. And so these laws are trying to be fair and trying to be just. But remember, as we read in the prologue, one of the first bell works we had this chapter, Hammurabi's goal was that the punishment should match the severity, but also that the weak are protected. He wants to make sure that people don't abuse the weak. Now today in Pause, it was a lot of fun. We got to learn a little bit more about Hammurabi's code, and then you guys got to make your very own codes. So here's some of the ones that we saw today. If you were found wasting food, then you have to spend a week making food or farming to see how much work the person puts up with that. And that's from the Code of Emerson. From the Code of Paul, we have if a bank is robbed, then that person will be arrested for 26 years. Paul, that is a very specific number. I would love to hear how you got 26 years specifically. Okay. From the Code of Andrew, we have pick up your trash or your Wi-Fi and electricity will be turned off for 3 whole months. Do you think you could survive without Wi-Fi for 3 months? I don't know if I could. And from the Code of Hera, look how pretty that handwriting is, that if you break into somebody else's house, you could go to jail from anywhere from 3 to 10 years, or you could pay a fine at least $5,000. Now, there were lots more. I had like 30 of y'all in my room, and you had some amazing crimes and punishments that you thought were important in society. So as we continue on our bell work, you're going to see more and more of Hammurabi's code. Keep in mind, if you think that this goal of being fair and punishment matching the crime, if you think that goal was met, and remember, Hammurabi said that Shamash, the god of justice, gave him these laws. So in this picture, here's Shamash sitting on the throne, and he's giving Hammurabi these laws, okay? So think about if you think these laws really are just and fair. All right, guys, so that's about it for this set of notes. Remember that these are due Friday the 29th, so please, please, please be prepared on Friday so we can really dig in depth and talk more about these. We are so proud of you guys. We are almost all the way through our first chapter of actual civilizations, and we can't wait to move on. We're going to be moving on to Egypt next, so we've got lots of awesome things planned. We are so proud of you guys. You guys work hard every day, and we can't wait to see what we have coming up next. See you soon. Have a great night.